Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Cast your mind back, maybe to 2022. All of a sudden, this new phrase just seemed to explode across social media.
Oh, yeah.
You saw it everywhere, especially TikTok.
Right.
And then suddenly, it's in our workplace chats. Quiet quitting.
It really was everywhere and described in so many different ways, too.
Exactly. Was it like setting healthy boundaries?
Yeah.
Or was it just doing the absolute bare minimum? For some people, it felt like this revelation. But for others, maybe it was a real source of frustration, feeling like they had to pick up the slack. It really made us all rethink our whole relationship with work, didn't it?
It absolutely did. And this timely but often kind of confusing trend is precisely what a group of dedicated researchers decided to really dig into with, proper scientific rigor.
Yeah.
So today we're going to share some insights from a really important article published in the Human Resource Management Journal.
Which is a big deal, right? It's an FT50 listed journal for those of you who follow academic rankings.
Right. That's right. It signals real quality and impact. This work, it's rigorously peer-reviewed, and it's titled Exploring Coworker Perceptions of and Reactions to Quiet Quitting.
And the minds behind it, the researchers who did this valuable work, are Andrew A. Bennett, Rhett T. Epler, Veronica L. Thomas, and Darun Jalil. They're all based at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, over in the USA. Now, if you're someone who's maybe just starting out on your own research journey, or maybe you're just really curious about how academic knowledge actually gets built and tested, we really truly encourage you to read this article in full. It's so thoughtfully put together, meticulously peer-reviewed. Whether you subscribe to our channel or not, honestly, just taking the time to read a paper like this, it's like a masterclass.
It really is. You see how they define a new concept, how they carefully differentiate it from similar ideas, and then how they systematically test its implications. It's the whole process laid out.
Exactly. And we put the link right there in our show notes, nice and convenient for you.
So our goal here today is really to unpack this fascinating paper. We want to give you the essential findings, but also, crucially, the why it matters behind them.
And what's really insightful, I think, is the angle they took.
Oh, absolutely. Instead of focusing on the person doing the quiet quitting, which is where a lot of the media buzz was,
Right.
They flipped it. They looked at it entirely from the perspective of the coworkers.
That shift just opens up a whole new way of understanding the impact, doesn't it? How these things actually ripple through a team.
Definitely. It gets into the social dynamics of it all.
So let's kind of trace their research journey, because it's a fantastic example of how you take a fuzzy, popular concept and give it some academic shape.
Well, the first problem, as you mentioned, with a catchy term like quiet quitting, is that it just springs up from popular culture.
Yeah, no formal definition.
Exactly. No clear, agreed-upon meaning. And that, as the authors point out, just led to a lot of confusion. Was it actually something new? Or just, old wine in a new bottle? A trendy name for something we've seen before.
Right, like burnout or disengagement, all those other terms floating around.
Precisely. So to cut through that fog, the researchers did the smart thing. They started qualitatively.
Which is often the first step, isn't it? Just listening.
It's crucial. You have to listen to people, gather that rich descriptive data to understand what's going on from their perspective. So back in January 2023, after the term had really taken off, they used an online platform, Prolific, to ask 54 employees to just define quiet quitting in their own words. Simple as that.
And what came back from that? What was the common thread?
It was actually pretty consistent. A big majority, 82%, they defined it primarily as doing the minimum amount of work to keep the job.
Okay.
And not going above and beyond. That really emerged as the core observable behavior they decided to focus on.
Interesting. And did they see it as the same as, say, setting boundaries? Because that was part of the online discussion, too.
That's a great point. Most participants feel it was actually quite distinct. They describe setting boundaries more like, working hard during work hours, but then clearly and openly communicating that you wouldn't be doing more after hours. Quiet quitting felt different.
More passive, maybe? Less communicative.
Perhaps. And they also noted some overlaps with other concepts. For instance, some mentioned things like arriving a bit later, taking longer lunches behaviors. The researchers carefully coded under the existing term work withdrawal.
Okay, so that's one distinct category.
Right. And others mentioned things like, they never volunteer for extra tasks, or they don't help out on projects beyond their immediate job. And those the researchers identified as potentially overlapping with social loafing.
The idea of slacking off in a team setting.
Exactly. So this initial qualitative work was vital. It didn't just confirm the core idea of doing the minimum, but it also helped map out the terrain, showing where quiet quitting might bump up against these other already established concepts. It really laid the foundation.
Okay, so you have this clearer picture from listening to people. But then comes the next big academic hurdle. How do you actually measure this thing reliably?
Right, you need to quantify it somehow. That led them straight into their second study, which was all about creating and validating specific survey questions or items.
And the challenge there, I guess, is making sure those questions only measure quiet quitting and not accidentally picking up on that work withdrawal or social loafing stuff they identified.
Precisely. Because on the surface, they can seem pretty similar, but the theoretical distinctions are subtle, yet really important.
Can you break that down a bit, the difference between them?
Sure. Think of work withdrawal as more actively disengaging. Maybe you are consistently late or you're taking excessively long breaks, maybe even not getting your core tasks done properly.
Okay, so it's about reducing overall input, maybe even failing responsibilities.
Sort of, yeah. Then social loafing, that's specifically about reducing your effort when you're part of a team, often because you think others will pick up the slack.
Right, relying on the group.
But quiet quitting, as they defined it based on study 1, is different. It's specifically about doing just enough to meet your own job requirements, but making a conscious choice not to do anything extra. No more, no less than the minimum.
So it's not necessarily failing at your job or slacking on team tasks.
Yeah.
It's just stopping at the baseline.
Exactly. The authors frame it nicely. They say quiet quitting seems to occupy this unique middle space.
Yeah.
It's not high organizational citizenship behavior, going the extra mile, but it's also not necessarily counterproductive work behavior like withdrawal or loafing might be. It's just minimum compliance.
Okay, so how do they actually create survey items to capture just that middle space?
Well, they took a rigorous approach. They brought in 16 subject matter experts, all with PhDs in relevant fields.
Wow, okay.
And these experts rated 10 potential new survey items against a formal definition of coworker quiet quitting again, focusing on what a colleague would observe.
And did any items make the cut?
Yes, but only 3. After all the expert ratings and statistical analysis, only 3 items consistently and distinctly measured quiet quitting as they defined it.
What were they?
The items were, does the bare minimum at work, does not go above and beyond, and puts in the required amount of effort but not more.
Simple, direct, observable.
Exactly. And they use some pretty sophisticated stats, things like heterotrait monotrait ratios and checking confidence intervals, to be really sure these items were measuring something unique, not just rehashing existing concepts. It's like creating a specific scientific fingerprint for the behavior.
And they didn't just stop there, did they? I remember reading they replicated this.
That's right. Good science requires replication. So they repeated this validation process with a larger sample of 93 actual employees.
To make sure the results weren't just a fluke.
Precisely. They wanted to ensure the findings were robust and reliable, and they were. The same 3 items held up. It's so important for you, especially if you're interested in research, to see how crucial that step is for building confidence in the findings.
Okay, so now they have a definition grounded in qualitative data, and they have 3 validated survey items to measure it. What was next? Study 3.
Yep, study 3. With the definition refined and the measurement tool validated, the next logical step was to empirically test if quiet quitting, as measured by their new items, was truly distinct from those related concepts in practice.
So putting it to the test with real employee perceptions.
Exactly. They looked at work withdrawal, social loafing, but also things like work-non-work segmentation, boundary management, work engagement, and even workaholism.
Why those specific ones?
Because those were the concepts that kept popping up in media discussions or seemed theoretically close. They wanted to cover all the bases.
Makes sense. So how do they test the distinctness?
They surveyed 178 employees. They presented them with behavioral descriptions related to all those different constructs, withdrawal, loafing, engagement, etc., and asked them how much each behavior also represented quiet quitting. Crucially, they didn't give the participants a definition of quiet quitting beforehand.
So they were tapping into people's intuitive understanding of the term based on the behaviors they saw described.
Exactly. It tests how people naturally categorize these behaviors in relation to this new buzzword.
And what did they find? Are they all just the same thing in people's minds?
Well, they did find correlations, which you'd expect. Quiet quitting did correlate significantly with work withdrawal and social loafing in particular.
Okay, so there is overlap.
There is overlap. The correlations were around 0.64 with withdrawal and 0.53 with loafing. But, and this is the key point, those correlations weren't so high, not like 0.9 or anything, to suggest they were basically measuring the exact same thing.
So, related, but not identical.
Precisely. There was still clear space for empirical distinction, as they put it. This is a really significant finding academically. It provides strong evidence that quiet quitting isn't just, new wine in an old bottle. It has its own unique characteristics, its own distinct flavor that people can observe.
So the big takeaway from these first 3 studies is really foundational, isn't it?
Absolutely. Quiet quitting isn't just a vague buzzword. Through careful qualitative work, expert validation, and empirical testing, these researchers established it as a distinct, observable behavior. Basically, doing the bare minimum, no more, no less.
That clarity is so important. Okay, so now that we have a much better handle on what quiet quitting is, the next big question is, so what? What happens when people see it in their coworkers? How do they react?
Exactly. That's where the research pivots in studies 4 and 5. They moved from definition and measurement to exploring the consequences, the ripple effect within the team.
So study 4 started looking at those reactions.
Yes. Study 4 went back to a more qualitative, exploratory approach first. They wanted to understand the range of attitudes and behaviors people might have towards coworkers they perceive as quiet quitting.
How did they do that?
They surveyed 188 employees and divided them based on their own self-reported quiet quitting levels. So you had about 45% who rated themselves as high quiet quitters and about 54% who rated themselves as low quiet quitters.
Okay, comparing the quitters and the non-quitters.
Right. And they asked both groups about how they perceived or reacted to quiet quitting in others, or how they thought others reacted to them if they were quiet quitting themselves.
And what did the self-identified quiet quitters think? Did they feel noticed?
This was really interesting. The vast majority, over 83%, believed their coworkers either didn't notice or didn't care, or they felt like, well, everyone does it, it's the norm here.
A perception that it's okay or invisible.
Largely, yes. However, there was a significant minority, nearly 28%, who did sense some negative vibes, negative attitudes, or behaviors from coworkers, even if they were subtle.
So maybe a potential blind spot there. They might think it's going unnoticed, but maybe it isn't always.
That's exactly what it suggests. They might be underestimating the impact or the noticeability.
Okay, what about the other group? The ones who didn't see themselves as quiet quitters. How did they feel and act towards colleagues they perceived as doing the minimum?
Their responses were much more varied. Attitude-wise, it was pretty split. About 46% were neutral, kind of, I don't mind, it doesn't affect me. But almost 55% expressed negative feelings, things like, it's frustrating or it irritates me. And then interestingly, a small group, nearly 12%, were actually positive, saying things like, I support them, maybe seeing it as boundary setting.
Wow, quite a mix of feelings. What about actual behaviors? Did they treat them differently?
Again, a mix. Half said they were neutral, treated them the same, but about a quarter, 24%, reported positive behaviors, like trying to help them out or treating them with respect regardless.
Okay, some support there.
But then you had over a third, almost 34%, reporting negative behaviors. And this ranged quite a bit.
Like what?
From simply avoiding the person to actively documenting their lack of effort, maybe even trying to get them to quit or be managed out.
Whoa, okay. So it can escalate beyond just annoyance.
It certainly can. So the big takeaway from study 4 is pretty clear. Coworkers do notice quiet quitting, and their reactions are really diverse, ranging all the way from support to active avoidance or even trying to push people out.
It really shows how complex workplace social dynamics are, doesn't it? It's not just an individual thing. It affects the whole team atmosphere.
Absolutely. It hints that the seemingly passive behavior can trigger some quite active responses.
So building on those qualitative insights,
Yeah.
Study 5 tried to get more precise, right? Using an experimental design.
Exactly. Study 5 moved into more controlled conditions using vignettes, which are basically short, descriptive scenarios. This is a powerful research technique because it helps establish cause and effect more clearly. You can isolate the impact of one specific factor, in this case, observing quiet quitting.
How did that work?
They had 204 employees participate. Each person was randomly assigned to read one of 3 scenarios about a fictional coworker named Alex.
Okay.
In one scenario, Alex was described as quiet quitting, doing the minimum, not going above and beyond. In another, Alex was an average performer, doing some extra stuff sometimes. And in the third, Alex was a maximum performer, always going way above and beyond.
So manipulating the perceived performance level.
Precisely. After reading their assigned scenario, Participants reported how likely they'd be to engage in supportive behaviors towards Alex, like offering help or being friendly, and also how likely they'd be to engage in uncivil behaviors, like ignoring Alex or being condescending.
Okay, so testing two main hypotheses then. Observing quiet quitting would lead to less support
Yep,
and more incivility.
that was the prediction. And what did the results show?
Did it play out like that?
It did. Both hypotheses were strongly supported by the data. Participants who read about the quiet quitting Alex were significantly less likely to say they'd offer help or be friendly compared to those who read about the average or high-performing Alex.
Okay, so a reduction in positive behaviors.
And importantly, they were also significantly more likely to report intending to engage in subtle incivility towards the quiet quitting Alex. Things like pay little attention to the coworker or act condescendingly.
So it's not just withholding help, it's potentially adding negativity, even if subtle.
Exactly. It shows a real, measurable, negative behavioral reaction from coworkers when they perceive quiet quitting.
Now, here's where I remember it getting really interesting. They also looked at the participants' own tendency to quiet quit, right?
Yes, they measured self-rated quiet quitting as well.
And the initial idea, the hypothesis, was that if you yourself are a quiet quitter, you'd probably be less harsh towards another quiet quitter, like a birds of a feather kind of thing.
That was the expectation, exactly. It seems intuitive perceived similarity should lead to more leniency or understanding.
But that's not what they found, was it?
No, this is where the results took a surprising turn. That hypothesis was not supported in the way they expected.
What did they find instead?
Instead, they found that individuals who rated themselves as high in quiet quitting tendencies were actually more likely to report intending to engage in incivility towards all coworkers, regardless of whether the coworker in the vignette was quiet quitting, average, or high performing.
Wait, really? So the high quiet quitters were just generally more uncivil across the board?
That's what this specific finding suggests. It wasn't that they were nicer to fellow quiet quitters. They reported a higher likelihood of incivility towards everyone, whereas the people low in quiet quitting were less uncivil, particularly towards the average and high performers.
That's quite a twist. It suggests maybe quiet quitting isn't just about work output, but potentially linked to a broader interpersonal style. Or maybe a general dissatisfaction that spills over.
It definitely warrants more exploration, as the authors note. It wasn't about quiet quitters finding solidarity. It seemed to reveal a more general and surprising behavioral pattern of incivility associated with high self-rated quiet quitting.
Wow. Okay, so putting all 5 studies together now,
Yeah.
what are the big picture contributions of this whole research effort?
Well, first off, and this is huge, they've given us a much clearer, observable definition of quiet quitting, doing the bare minimum, not going above and beyond. That alone is critical for future research and even for managers trying to understand what's happening. It cuts through the noise.
Yes, separating it from withdrawal or loafing is key.
Absolutely. Second, the focus on the coworker's perspective is really novel and important. Because let's face it, our coworkers shape our daily work experience immensely. Their reactions matter.
Definitely.
Third, this work really pushes theory forward, particularly social exchange theory. It shows that even in action, someone just quietly doing the minimum isn't neutral. It can trigger significant responses, both active like incivility and inactive like withholding support. It changes how we think about reciprocity at work.
That inaction can be an action in itself in terms of social consequences.
Precisely. And finally, the finding that the reactions tend towards lower intensity incivility rather than, say, outright aggression or sabotage is a subtle but really important detail for organizations to understand. It's often happening just under the radar.
So let's talk practical implications.
Yeah.
For someone listening, maybe you're a manager, maybe you're just a colleague on a team. What should you take away from this?
Well, one clear message is that conversations are really important. If you notice a coworker who seems to be quiet quitting, the research suggests they might genuinely not realize the negative impact it could be having, or even that others perceive it negatively.
Because many thought it went unnoticed.
Exactly. So a direct, maybe empathetic conversation could actually be beneficial. It's not necessarily about accusation, but about understanding and maybe finding solutions together. They might not be trying to harm the team.
That's a good point. And for organizations, for managers.
The research underscores that quiet quitting isn't just an individual issue affecting one person's productivity. It can ripple outwards, potentially leading to reduced team cohesion, more subtle incivility flying around, and just a generally more negative team dynamic.
A downward spiral, potentially.
It could be. So firms probably need strategies not just to identify it, but to intervene constructively. Maybe that involves rethinking workloads, improving recognition, providing better growth opportunities, or fostering a more engaging environment overall.
And that link between self-rated quiet quitting and general incivility from Study 5, that seems really important for managers too.
It is. It suggests there might be a hidden cost or a broader behavioral pattern associated with quiet quitting that needs attention. It's not just about lack of extra effort. It could be contributing to workplace friction in other ways. Even if the overall incivility levels reported were relatively low on average, it's about a tendency.
And for those listeners who are maybe just starting their own research journey, this paper also points towards future directions, doesn't it? Where does the research go from here?
Oh, absolutely. It opens up lots of avenues. For instance, there's more work needed on refining the measurement.
Yeah.
Can we develop scales that capture quiet quitting from different viewpoints, the self, the coworker, the supervisor?
Right, getting multiple perspectives.
There may be capturing the attitudes or emotions behind it, not just the observable behavior, also understanding the dynamic nature of it. Does quiet quitting fluctuate day to day?
Like using diary studies or something?
Exactly. Event-based studies could see how it changes in response to specific events, like a bad interaction with a boss or a change in workload.
And cultural context must matter too, right? This was US-based.
Hugely important. These studies were with U.S. full-time employees. How might cultural norms around work effort or different work setups, like part-time roles or remote work with less coworker interaction, how might those change these dynamics? We don't know yet.
Lots more to explore there.
And finally, exploring other factors, other moderators. For example, do people's underlying beliefs about give and take at work, their exchange ideologies, influence how they react to a quiet quitting coworker? Lots of fascinating questions remain.
So it really makes you think. If quiet quitting boils down to doing the bare minimum, and we now know that observing this can lead to these subtle but real negative responses like incivility and reduced support, what are the unspoken costs? What happens in our workplaces when people aren't actively engaged, aren't going that extra mile, even if they're meeting the basic job requirements? What kind of environment are we helping to create, maybe implicitly, through our own actions or perhaps our inactions?
It's a powerful thought.
And how does that ripple through our teams in ways we're only just starting to really understand scientifically? It's definitely something worth reflecting on, especially as you think about your own path in the world of work and maybe even research. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.
রিভাইজ অ্যান্ড রিসাবমিটে স্বাগতম। আমি প্যাভলভ।
আর আমি নিকিতা। অফিসের সেই সহকর্মীর কথা কি কখনো ভেবে দেখেছেন, যিনি ঠিক ঘড়ি ধরে কাজ শেষ করেন, কিন্তু তার চেয়ে একটুও বেশি কিছু করতে বললে যেন আগ্রহই পান না? মনে হয় যেন চাকরিতে তো আছেন, কিন্তু মনটা ঠিক সেখানে নেই। এই যে ব্যাপারটা, একেই আজকাল অনেকে বলছেন কোয়ায়েট কুইটিং। আমাদের আজকের আলোচনা এই নিয়েই। আর এটা কিন্তু একটা গবেষণার সারসংক্ষেপ। খুব নামকরা একটা জার্নাল, হিউম্যান রিসোর্স ম্যানেজমেন্ট। এটা আবার FT50 তালিকাভুক্ত, মানে খুবই উঁচু মানের।
হ্যাঁ, ব্যবসার জগতে এর ভালোই পরিচিতি।
তো এর লেখকরা হলেন অ্যান্ড্রু এ বেনেট, রেড টি এপলার, ভেরোনিকা এল থমাস আর দারুন জলিল। তারা সবাই আমেরিকার ভার্জিনিয়ার ওল্ড ডোমিনিয়ন ইউনিভার্সিটির গবেষক। আমরা সবাইকে অনুরোধ করব, যদি সময় পান, মূল প্রবন্ধটা একটু পড়ে দেখতে। খুবই যত্নের সাথে লেখা, আর বিশেষজ্ঞরা এটা ভালোভাবে যাচাইও করেছেন। লিঙ্কটা শো নোটসে দেওয়া আছে।
হ্যাঁ, এটা পড়া উচিত, বিশেষ করে যারা নিজেরা গবেষণা করছেন বা শুরু করবেন ভাবছেন।
ঠিক, আমরাও চেষ্টা করেছি আলোচনাটা এমনভাবে রাখতে যাতে যারা একাডেমিক গবেষণার জগতে নতুন, তাদের বুঝতে একটু সুবিধা হয়। তো এই কোয়ায়েট কুইটিং শব্দটা 2022 সাল নাগাদ বেশ আলোচনায় আসে, তাই না?
খুব ছড়িয়ে পড়েছিল।
কিন্তু সমস্যাটা ছিল, এর কোনো একরকম সংজ্ঞা ছিল না। একজন এক এক রকম বলতেন।
ঠিক, কেউ বলতেন তাজের গণ্ডি ঠিক করা, কেউ বলতেন দায় সারা কাজ।
এই গবেষণাটার একটা বড় উদ্দেশ্যই ছিল মানে সহকর্মীরা বাইরে থেকে যে আচরণটা দেখেন তার ভিত্তিতে এর একটা স্পষ্ট সংজ্ঞা তৈরি করা। লেখকরা সেজন্য কয়েকটা ধাপে কাজটা করেছেন, মানে গবেষণা 1 থেকে 3-এ।
হ্যাঁ, একটা পদ্ধতিগত পথ অনুসরণ করা হয়েছে।
শেষমেশ তারা যে সংজ্ঞাটায় এলেন সেটা হলো কেবলমাত্র ন্যূনতম প্রয়োজনীয় কাজ করা এবং নিজের দায়িত্বের বাইরে অতিরিক্ত কিছু না করা। খুব সহজ, কিন্তু কাজের কথা।
একদম। আর এই সংজ্ঞাটা জরুরি কারণ এটা কোয়াইট কুইটিংকে অন্য কিছু কাছাকাছি ধারণা থেকে আলাদা করছে। যেমন ধরুন, এটা শুধু কাজের সীমানা নির্ধারণ বা সেটিং বাউন্ডারিজ না, কারণ যারা সীমানা ঠিক করেন তারা কিন্তু কাজের সময়টাতে বেশ মন দিয়েই খাটেন, শুধু অতিরিক্ত সময় বা দায়িত্ব এড়িয়ে চলেন।
আচ্ছা।
আবার এটা কাজ থেকে নিজেকে সরিয়ে নেওয়াও না, মানে ওয়ার্ক উইথড্রল যাকে বলে, যেখানে কর্মীরা মানসিকভাবে বা শারীরিকভাবেই কাজ থেকে দূরে সরে যায়। বা ধরুন সামাজিক শ্রম বিমুখতা বা সোশ্যাল লোফিংও নয়, মানে দলে কাজ করার সময় কম চেষ্টা করা।
তাহলে কোয়াইট কুইটাররা ঠিক কি করেন?
তারা নিজেদের কাজটা ঠিকঠাক করেন, কিন্তু বাড়তি কিছু করেন না। বলা যেতে পারে এটা ওই ধারণাগুলোর মানে একটা মাঝামাঝি জায়গায় আছে।
বেশ পরিষ্কার হলো। কিন্তু আচ্ছা, যারা নিজেরা কোয়াইট কুইটিং করেন না সেই সহকর্মীরা এদের কিভাবে দেখেন? এখানেই তো গবেষণা 4-এর ফলাফলটা আসছে।
হ্যাঁ, আর এখানে একটা মজার ব্যাপার আছে।
কি রকম?
অনেক কোয়াইট কুইটার ভাবেন যে তাদের এই কম কাজ করাটা মানে শুধু দরকারিটুকু করাটা কেউ তেমন খেয়ালই করে না বা গায়ে মাখে না।
কিন্তু বাস্তবে
যারা নিজেরা কোয়াইট কুইটিং করেন না তাদের অনেকে কিন্তু এদের প্রতি বেশ হতাশ হন, এমনকি কিছুটা নেতিবাচক আচরণও দেখান।
নেতিবাচক আচরণ মানে এড়িয়ে চলা বা এরকম কিছু?
ঠিক, যেমন এড়িয়ে চলা, কম সাহায্য করা বা ধরুন কিছুটা রুহু বা অশিষ্ট আচরণ করা।
ও আচ্ছা।
হ্যাঁ, আর এই ব্যাপারটা গবেষণায় 5-এ আরও স্পষ্টভাবে পরীক্ষা করা হয়েছে একটা এক্সপেরিমেন্টাল ভিগনেট ডিজাইন ব্যবহার করে।
ভিগনেট ডিজাইন মানে কাল্পনিক পরিস্থিতি?
হ্যাঁ, অংশগ্রহণকারীদের কিছু কাল্পনিক পরিস্থিতি পড়তে দেয়া হয়। ধরুন একজন সহকর্মী কোয়াইট কুইটিং করছেন, আরেকজন গড়পড়াতা কাজ করছেন, আরেকজন খুব ভালো কাজ করছেন।
তারপর
ফলাফলটা বেশ পরিষ্কার। দেখা গেছে যখন একজন সহকর্মীকে কোয়াইট কুইটিং করতে দেখা যায় তখন অন্যেরা তার প্রতি কম সমর্থন দেখায়, মানে সাহায্য করতে সেভাবে এগিয়ে আসে না। আর বেশি কর্মক্ষেত্রে অশিষ্ট আচরণ করে, যেমন হয়তো তার কথায় তেমন গুরুত্ব দিল না বা একটু অবজ্ঞা করল।
এটা কি সোশ্যাল এক্সচেঞ্জ থিওরির সাথে সম্পর্কিত?
একদম। দেখুন, এই তত্ত্বটা বলে যে কর্মক্ষেত্রে আমরা একে অপরের থেকে একটা পারস্পরিক সহযোগিতা আশা করি, তাই না?
হ্যাঁ, তা তো বটে।
যখন একজন সহকর্মী অতিরিক্ত কিছু করেন না, যেটা আসলে এক ধরনের নিষ্ক্রিয়তা,
হ্যাঁ,
সেটাও এই আদান প্রদানের নিয়ম ভাঙা হিসাবে দেখা হতে পারে, আর তার ফলে অন্যরা নেতিবাচক প্রতিক্রিয়া দেখায়।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, বোঝা গেল। কিন্তু এখানে একটা বেশ অবাক করার মতো ব্যাপারও আছে, তাই না? গবেষণা 5-এর একটা ফলাফল কিন্তু একটু অন্যরকম ইঙ্গিত দিচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ, একটা অপ্রত্যাশিত ফলাফল ছিল।
কি সেটা?
দেখা গেছে যারা নিজেরাই স্বীকার করেছেন যে তারা বেশি কোয়াইট কুইটিং করেন, তারা অন্যদের প্রতি বেশি অশিষ্ট আচরণ করার প্রবণতা দেখিয়েছেন।
অন্যদের প্রতি
মানে তাদের সহকর্মী কেমন কাজ করছেন সেটা দেখে নয়।
না, সেটাই তো আশ্চর্যের। সহকর্মী কোয়াইট কুইটিং করুন বা গড়পড়তা কাজ করুন বা সেরা পারফর্ম করুন, যারা নিজেরা কোয়াইট কুইটার তারা নির্বিশেষে অন্যদের প্রতি বেশি অশিষ্ট। এটা তো স্বাভাবিক, যুক্তির একটু বাইরে মনে হচ্ছে। কারণ মনে হতে পারত যারা নিজেরা একটি রকম তারা হয়তো কোয়াইট কুইটিং করা সহকর্মীর প্রতি বেশি সহানুভূতি দেখাবেন।
ঠিক, সেটাই প্রত্যাশা ছিল, কিন্তু ফলাফলটা অন্যরকম।
বেশ ইন্টারেস্টিং।
তাহলে পুরো আলোচনার মূল বিষয়গুলো যদি একটু গুছিয়ে বলি, কোয়াইট কুইটিং মানে ন্যূনতম কাজ করা, অতিরিক্ত কিছু না করা। এটা একটা স্বতন্ত্র আচরণ, এটা শুধু কাজের সীমানা ঠিক করা বা কাজ ফাঁকি দেওয়া নয়।
আর এর একটা সামাজিক প্রভাবও আছে।
হ্যাঁ, এর একটা সামাজিক মূল্য আছে। এটা কর্মক্ষেত্রের সম্পর্ককে খারাপ দিকে নিতে পারে, সহকর্মীদের সমর্থন কমে যেতে পারে, আবার অশিষ্ট আচরণের শিকারও হতে পারেন তিনি।
আর সেই অবাক করা ফলাফলটা?
আর সবচেয়ে চমকপ্রদ বিষয় হলো যারা নিজেরা কোয়াইট কুইটিং করেন তাদের মধ্যেই আবার অন্যদের প্রতি সহকর্মী পারফরমেন্স যাই হোক না কেন বেশি অশিষ্ট হওয়ার প্রবণতা দেখা গেছে।
তাহলে এখান থেকে একটা বড় প্রশ্ন চলে আসে, তাই না?
কি রকম? যখন শুধুমাত্র প্রত্যাশা পূরণ করার মতো একটা আপাত দৃষ্টিতে নিরীহ আচরণেরও এমন সূক্ষ্ম কিন্তু নেতিবাচক সামাজিক পরিণতি থাকতে পারে।
হ্যাঁ,
তখন কর্মীদের পারফরম্যান্স মূল্যায়ন করার সময় বা একটা সুস্থ সহযোগিতামূলক টিম গড়ে তোলার ক্ষেত্রে এই বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে আমাদের কি নতুন করে ভাবার দরকার আছে? এটা নিশ্চয়ই আমাদের ভাবনার খোরাক যোগায়।
नमस्कार।
रिवाइज एंड रीसबमिट में आपका स्वागत है। मैं हूं पावलोव
और मैं हूं निकिता। कभी ऐसा महसूस हुआ है ऑफिस में कि कोई साथी है जो बस अपना काम खत्म करता है, घड़ी देखी और निकल गए, मतलब न 1 मिनट ज्यादा न कोई एक्स्ट्रा काम, जितना कहा बस उतना। इसी को आजकल लोग क्वाइट क्विटिंग कह रहे हैं। पर कभी सोचा है कि दूसरे लोग जो साथ काम करते हैं वो इसे कैसे देखते हैं, उन पर क्या बीतती है?
हाँ, ये सवाल आजकल बहुत बहुत आम है और हमारी आज की जो बातचीत है वो इसी मुद्दे पर है। ये एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण रिसर्च पेपर पर आधारित है जो ह्यूमन रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट जर्नल में छपा है। और आपको बता दूं कि ये एक FT50 लिस्टेड जर्नल है, मतलब दुनिया के टॉप मैनेजमेंट जर्नल्स में से एक। इसके लेखक हैं एंड्रयू ए बेनेट, रे टी एपलर, वेरोनिका एल थॉमस और दारून जलील। ये सभी अमेरिका में ओल्ड डोमिनियन यूनिवर्सिटी वर्जीनिया से जुड़े हैं।
हाँ, और हम अपने सुनने वालों से ये ज़रूर कहना चाहेंगे कि इस पेपर को पढ़ने के लिए प्लीज़ थोड़ा समय निकालें। ये बहुत गहराई से की गई रिसर्च है, पीयर रिव्यूड है। लिंक आपको शो नोट्स में मिल जाएगा। आप इस चैनल से जुड़े हों या ना हो, मेरा मानना है कि इसे पढ़ना सबके लिए फ़ायदेमंद होगा।
जी, तो आज हम कोशिश करेंगे कि इस रिसर्च की जो मुख्य बातें हैं, जो फाइंडिंग्स हैं, उन्हें आसान शब्दों में समझें। खासतौर पर उन लोगों के लिए जो शायद एकेडमिक रिसर्च की दुनिया में नए हैं या अपनी रिसर्च जर्नी अभी शुरू कर रहे हैं। हम देखेंगे कि रिसर्चर क्वाइट क्विटिंग को कैसे देखते हैं, कैसे डिफाइन करते हैं, और सबसे ज़रूरी कि जब कोई ऐसा करता है तो उसके साथियों पर क्या असर पड़ता है।
तो मतलब पहला बड़ा सवाल यही है कि जब कोई अपने साथी को क्वाइट क्विटिंग करते हुए देखता है तो उसके लिए मतलब क्या है इसका? क्या वो ये सोचते हैं कि अरे ये तो बस वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस बना रहा है, या कुछ और समझ आता है उन्हें?
हाँ, ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल है। तो स्टडीज अध्ययन 1.3 ये बताती हैं कि जब सहकर्मी इसे देखते हैं तो उनके लिए इसका मतलब होता है काम पर बस न्यूनतम, मतलब बिल्कुल जरूरी भर का एफर्ट लगाना, और जो उम्मीद की जाती है ना कि थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा करेंगे, वो बिल्कुल नहीं करना। अंग्रेजी में जैसे कहते हैं डूइंग द बेयर मिनिमम और नॉट गोइंग अबव एंड बियॉन्ड।
अच्छा।
और ये समझना जरूरी है कि ये वो नहीं है जिसे हम वर्क विड्रॉल कहते हैं, मतलब काम से पूरी तरह जी चुराना, या सोशल लोफिंग भी नहीं है कि ग्रुप में है तो कम मेहनत कर रहे हैं, और ना ही ये सिर्फ काम और निजी जिंदगी के बीच बाउंड्री बनाना है। ये उससे कुछ अलग है। शोधकर्ताओं ने इसे मापने के लिए खास तौर पर 3 चीजें पहचानी हैं। इसे समझने के लिए रिसर्चर्स एक थ्योरी का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, सोशल एक्सचेंज थ्योरी। मोटा मोटा मतलब यह है कि हमारे रिश्ते एक तरह के लेन देन जैसे होते हैं। कोई जैसा बर्ताव करता है हम उसी हिसाब से प्रतिक्रिया देते हैं।
अच्छा, तो अगर सहकर्मी इसे सिर्फ न्यूनतम काम करना मान रहे हैं तो फिर उनके आपसी व्यवहार पे क्या असर पड़ता है इसका? वो कैसे रिएक्ट करते हैं?
हाँ, यहीं पर बात थोड़ी गहरी और चिंताजनक हो जाती है। रिसर्च अध्ययन 4-5 में ये पाया गया कि जब एम्प्लॉइज देखते हैं कि उनका कोई साथी ऐसे क्वाइट क्विटिंग कर रहा है तो वो उस साथी के लिए कम मददगार हो जाते हैं, मतलब कम सपोर्टिव। और इतना ही नहीं, बल्कि वो उस साथी के साथ थोड़ा रूखा व्यवहार, जिसे हम वर्क प्लेस इनसिविलिटी कहते हैं, मतलब कार्यस्थल पर अशिष्टता दिखाने की संभावना भी बढ़ जाती है। जैसे शायद उन्हें जानबूझकर इग्नोर करना, या मीटिंग में उनकी बात काट देना, या थोड़ा बेरुखी से बात करना, इस तरह की चीजें।
अरे बाप रे, ये तो वाकई सोचने वाली बात है। मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि बस वो अपना काम कम कर रहा है, उसका असर दूसरों के बर्ताव पर भी पड़ रहा है, वो भी नेगेटिव तरीके से।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। लेकिन इस रिसर्च में एक और चीज निकली जो शायद सबसे ज्यादा चौंकाने वाली है।
अच्छा, वो क्या?
हम आमतौर पर क्या सोचेंगे, यही ना, कि जो लोग खुद भी क्वाइट क्विटिंग करते हैं वो शायद अपने जैसे दूसरे साथियों को समझेंगे, उनके साथ नरमी बरतेंगे।
हाँ, लॉजिक तो यही कहता है।
पर रिसर्च में ठीक उल्टा पाया गया। जो कर्मचारी खुद ज्यादा क्वाइट क्विटिंग करते हैं वो असल में सभी सहकर्मियों के प्रति, चाहे वो जैसा भी काम कर रहे हों, ज्यादा अशिष्ट व्यवहार करते पाए गए
हैं। ये क्या बात हुई? मतलब अपने जैसे लोगों के प्रति भी?
जी हाँ, ऐसा लगता है कि उनका जो खुद का नजरिया है ना कि बस न्यूनतम करना है, वो उन्हें दूसरों के प्रति ज्यादा क्रिटिकल या कठोर बना देता है, सहानुभूतिपूर्ण बनाने भी बजाय।
कमाल है, ये तो बिल्कुल ही उम्मीद के परे है। तो कुल मिलाकर इस पूरी रिसर्च का सार ये निकलता है कि ये जो क्वाइट क्विटिंग है, ये सिर्फ एक इंसान का अपना फैसला या स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं है।
सही।
इसका असर पूरे ऑफिस के माहौल पर, टीम के डायनामिक्स पर, लोगों के आपसी रिश्तों पर पड़ता है। एक व्यक्ति का बस बहुत हुआ वाला एटीट्यूड दूसरों को भी नेगेटिव तरीके से बर्ताव करने पर मजबूर कर सकता है या उकसा सकता है।
बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने। और ये हमें एक बहुत ज़रूरी सवाल पर लाके खड़ा करता है कि क्या वाकई कार्यस्थल में सिर्फ न्यूनतम ज़रूरी काम करना ठीक है, अगर इसकी कीमत हमें अपने साथियों के साथ बिगड़ते रिश्तों के रूप में चुकानी पड़ रही है। और कंपनियां, ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस वो ऐसा माहौल कैसे बना सकती हैं जहां लोग अपना काम भी करें, जिम्मेदारी भी निभाएं, लेकिन साथ ही एक दूसरे का सपोर्ट भी करें, बिना किसी पर एक्स्ट्रा बोझ डाले या किसी को अलग थलग महसूस कराए बिना। इस पर सोचना बहुत ज़रूरी है।